Which is better, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G or the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G? Well, in this video, we're going to find out. Now, as the names of these two devices imply, the A23 5G is the successor to last year's A22 5G. Now, there are quite a few differences. Availability is definitely one of them, as the Galaxy A22 5G was never launched officially in the US, whereas with the Galaxy A23 5G, you can get this phone factory unlocked directly from Samsung in the US, but this phone is also offered at a variety of different US carriers. So I'd imagine that in the US in general, this phone will end up being much more successful. Now, of course, last year, Samsung did offer a lot of other A-series phones in the US, but it's definitely kind of interesting how they do switch things up year by year. Now, of course, the Galaxy A23 5G is currently available in the US and in other parts of the world, and I will be leaving a variety of different links in the video description so that you can see the most up-to-date pricing and availability. Now, I'll also be leaving links for the A22 5G as well, but I'm not sure how much longer this phone is going to be offered for. Now, both of these devices do feature 6.6-inch displays, which is awesome. However, they do feature different display technology. Now, with the Galaxy A23 5G, we have a PLS LCD display, compared to a TFT display with the A22 5G. Another difference is that with the A23 5G, we have a 120Hz refresh rate compared to 90Hz with the A22 5G. So while 90Hz is certainly better than 60Hz, 120Hz is even better. Now, despite this phone being a budget option from Samsung, it really does run smoothly. So overall, I'm really impressed with the performance from this device. Another thing I noticed with the A22 5G is that I did get some screen burn-in. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but it's essentially this area right here. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Now, of course, with these lower end devices, you can't expect to have the most high quality display panels out there, but without a doubt, with the A23 5G, we have a much better looking display. Not only do we have a faster refresh rate, but the display is brighter as well, and colors are a lot more accurate. Now, with both phones, we have 1080p displays. We have a PPI of 400 with the A23 5G compared to 399 with the A22 5G. Both phones have 20:9 aspect ratios, and with the A23 5G, we have an 82.5% screen-to-body ratio compared to 82.3% with the A22 5G. So essentially the same in that department. And also, when looking at these two devices on the front panels here, you can see that we have pretty much the same exact layout and form factor with that water drop notch up top and then the slightly thicker bottom bezel. It is a bit disappointing that with the A23 5G, we didn't get at least some sort of upgraded or modified design here just to kind of make things a bit more interesting. But I suppose Samsung figures that when people are looking for a phone in this segment, they don't care so much about the design, they just want a phone that's nice and reliable and gets the job done. Now, with both phones, the front-facing cameras are 8 megapixels, and both of these devices are offered in different storage configurations based on the regions that you get them in. Now, with this one, the A23 5G, this is the US model of the phone, and it did come with 64 gigabytes of internal storage, and then this version of the A22 5G does have 128 gigabytes. Now, both phones do support microSD card expansion, so that's definitely really awesome. Definitely glad to see that we're still getting that here with at least some A-series phones. Now, unfortunately, neither of these two devices feature wireless charging, but they do both feature fingerprint sensors on the power buttons. So let's give that a try right now on both phones. Let's give it a try first with the A23 5G. Nice and fast. One more time. There we go. And we'll give it a try here with the A22 5G. And also nice and accurate. One more time. There we go. So both phones have a pretty similar setup here with the fingerprint sensors. However, one thing that I did notice is that the fingerprint sensor is slightly larger with the A22 5G in comparison. Now, both of these phones also feature face unlock, so I do appreciate that we have multiple methods for accessing them. Now, as far as the cameras go, I already talked about the front-facing cameras, which are 8 megapixels on both phones. And then with the rear cameras, there are quite a few differences. The first difference, which you probably noticed, is the general design of the camera module itself. But in addition to that, we have a quad camera setup with the Galaxy A23 5G compared to a triple camera setup with the A22 5G. So with the A23 5G, we have a 50 megapixel main camera, a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle camera that can capture images at up to 123 degrees, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. Whereas with the Galaxy A22 5G, we have a 48 megapixel main camera, we have a 5 megapixel ultra wide angle camera, but that is 115 degrees, so not quite as wide, and we have a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. So the main difference is that with this phone, there is no macro camera, but both phones do support portrait mode for both the rear and front facing cameras. Now here's how things look on the camera apps on both phones. This is with the main camera right now on both. Then from here, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle cameras, where you can fit a lot more content into the frame. And you can see side by side here, we can definitely get a bit of a wider field of view with the A23 5G in comparison. Then from here, with the A23 5G, we can at least go over to the More tab to access the macro camera, which we don't have with the A22. So with that macro camera, I can get nice and close up. Let's go back here. We can then head over to portrait mode to get those blurred out backgrounds. We can also flip around to the front-facing cameras in both phones and do the same thing. So there's me right there. We can also take group selfies, so we're able to fit a little bit more into the frame here. And then we can switch over to the standard selfie mode right here, and that's pretty much how things look. So I think overall with the A23 5G, we are getting better upgraded cameras in comparison. That being said though, I do think the A22 5G is still a very capable device for mobile photography, so that is worth keeping in mind. Now a big difference with these two phones definitely has to be the RAM and processor. The first thing is that with this version of the A23 5G, we have 4 gigabytes of RAM. However, I believe this is offered in other RAM configurations in other regions. And then with this version of the A22 5G, we do have 6 gigabytes of RAM. But the processors are especially different with these two phones. So with the A23 5G, we have the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695 5G processor. And then with the A22 5G, we have the MediaTek Dimensity 700 5G processor. So it is at least nice that both phones do support 5G connectivity, especially considering that that is the future, if not the present already. So if you're gonna buy a new phone at this point, you might as well get one that does support your carrier's latest and greatest networks. But I did run a Geekbench 5 benchmark test with both phones, and I'll show you the scores from that test right now. But essentially, with the A23 5G, we did get higher scores, so you can see them right here, side by side. That being said though, I do think both phones are decently capable as being mid-range devices. So overall, I think if you are somebody who doesn't do necessarily that complicated of tasks on your smartphone, but you like to do social media, texting, phone calls, content consumption as well, I think both phones will be plenty powerful for you. But if you are someone that's more of a power user, maybe you're always on your phone all day and you are editing videos on your phone, doing high performance gaming, then you might want to go for something a bit more powerful. Now, as far as battery capacity goes, both phones do feature 5,000 milliamp hour internal batteries, so definitely expect to get very good battery life with either device, definitely a full day, if not 2. So that's a good thing. Now, as far as video recording goes, with the A23 5G, it does max out at 1080p with both the front and rear cameras. But with the A22 5G, we do have 1080p for the front, but with the rear camera, you can take 2K videos, so that's better than 1080p. Now, both of these devices have been updated to Android 12, so that's pretty awesome. And they'll both get Android 13 for sure. And then I know at least for the A23 5G, you'll be getting several more updates in the future, but I believe the A22 5G will also be getting a lot of other updates. Samsung has really expanded the amount of updates that they do to their mid-range and lower-end phones compared to how it was several years ago. So that's a great thing, and it'll definitely give both of these phones a lot of longevity. Now, with this version of the A23 5G, it does have NFC, but unfortunately, with this version of the A22 5G, there is no NFC. So if you do like to use NFC for mobile contactless payments, such as using Samsung Pay, then I would definitely double check with either of these two phones if you end up buying them to make sure that the one you're getting does have NFC, because I think it depends on the region whether or not that feature is included. But let's now take a closer look at the hardware of these two phones. Now, I already talked quite a bit about the front panels here, essentially the same. We do have a better display with the A23 5G, and I definitely think that does make quite a bit of a difference. Both phones are at 100% brightness right now, and you can see, just by looking at the two, how much better the display is with the A23 5G, and that's especially impressive considering that this display is not even AMOLED, it's PLS LCD. Now, both phones are made completely out of plastic. However, I've got to say, the A22 5G feels of better quality and also just looks a lot nicer in general. I really like this kind of frosted finish on the back panel. It gives us a nice contrast from the side rails in the phone. Whereas with the A23 5G, they pretty much went with the lowest quality, cheapest materials possible. That being said though, they certainly could have gone cheaper if they wanted to, so the phone will at least hold up. But when you're looking at these two phones side by side, the A22 5G definitely looks a lot more expensive and higher end, but most importantly, I'll let you be the judge of that. For both of these phones, I do recommend getting a case anyway, since plastic does scratch up quite a bit easier compared to other materials, so certainly keep that in mind. Now taking a look at the right side of both phones, we have an identical setup with volume up and down, and then also the power buttons, which is also the fingerprint sensor. On the left side of both phones, we also have the same setup here with the slot for the microSD card and SIM cards. Then up top here, both phones have noise canceling microphones. And then on the bottom of both phones, we have 3.5mm headphone jacks, microphones, USB-C ports for charging and data transfer, and the speakers. So overall, I do think the A23 5G is a very worthy successor to last year's A22 5G. Now this phone is certainly more of an evolution rather than a complete redesign, but I suppose Samsung found a design that works pretty well, and they figured that there's really no reason to change it too much. But most importantly, I'm curious to know what you think. Do you own either of these two phones right now? And if so, what do you think of them? And if you're looking to get one of the two, which one do you think you'll end up going for? Definitely let me know. But I hope you enjoyed this video comparing the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G versus the Samsung Galaxy A22 5G. If you liked the video, definitely give it a thumbs up. But this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one.